which they set up very well because the whole cover story for the robot was that, it got to be smart enough to think on its own and blah, 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 blah. Like that's the cover story for why Mr. Incredible goes in to fight the robot in the first place. That becomes the actual plot at the end of the movie.
Well, that also, what you're seeing is like Syndrome's thing is, right, he's very observant of superhero strengths and weaknesses, and he calibrates what he's doing to try and counter those things. But what he doesn't do is ever examine his own strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
That's what leads to it, right? He's not thinking. Twice in the movie, he is foiled by the fact that he has a cape, which Edna Mode points out is like, she obviously figured that out. I never designed superhero capes anymore because of what happened, right? She stopped doing it, right? It seems like something every superhero knows, not to wear a cape anymore. That's just stupid.
Everyone, and welcome back to the Men of Steel podcast. I'm Case Aiken, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Jmike Folson.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show.
Welcome back indeed, because today we are talking about a movie that is all about the welcoming back of some pretty incredible people, I think. That's right, we are talking about Disney's The Incredibles from 2004, and to have that conversation, we are joined by Doug Lief.
Hello.
Doug, it is so good to get you on Men of Steel. I've been over on your show, Nostalgium Arcanum, and you've been on another pass, but this is finally getting you on Men of Steel. It's great.
Actually, this is the second time on Men of Steel.
Oh,
if
is
you remember.
This the second time?
That's right, because you had me on to talk about Watchmen. Which,
oh, that's right. We had Watchmen, yes.
Interesting point of comparison, because this movie owes such a huge debt to Watchmen, and I think we'll need to talk about that as much as we talk about its connection to Superman.
That's true. Yeah, but we should discuss all of those things on this one. That's right. I am sorry I forgot about the Watchmen episode. How could I forget the Watchmen episode? It's just we've been interacting a lot in just general, and it's been great getting to know you in this sort of like podcast family that has been forming on the internet.
Yeah, we hide in our cars and listen to our podcast scanners waiting for the call.
I was gonna say, but speaking of family, this is the movie about a family of superheroes. I mean, like, we should just throw this out there. There's going to be spoilers in this conversation. There's
spoilers?
No point. Yeah, it's a 2004
for a 20-year-old movie Case.
Yeah, I know. We're going to assume you've seen the movie, is I guess the bigger point. It's not just this is a spoiler situation, but we're going to assume for the purpose of this conversation, because, this is not a complete dissection of the movie. That what this is a hope is to look at this movie from the lens of a Superman fan. And so we could start by discussing Mr. Incredible himself, or Doug, do you have anything that you want, like, that you're like dying to get off your chest about the movie, like off the gate?
I think this movie is just a love letter to superheroes in general. And we'll obviously talk about its connection to Superman. As I mentioned, I think there's a huge connection to Watchmen in particular. But this is such a fan film for everything superheroes. The aesthetics of it owe so much to like 60s Batman. The music in particular is based on John Barry's James Bond music, and James Bond, you could argue, is also a superhero. There's nods to, I think, in the visuals to some of the Superman Fleischer stuff. Like, there's everything about this is like referential but also deferential to other superheroes, right? The family is basically the Fantastic Four in terms of their power set. All of this stuff kind of comes together, and it should feel like it's just a regurgitation of stuff that came before, but it's not. It's not just, hey, look at that thing. It still feels like its own unique spin on the genre. So I think if you're a fan of any Superman or any a superhero franchise, there's something in here for you to love.
Yeah, there is a lot to love in this movie. I should probably also I should probably open this conversation that while I like this movie a lot, I don't love it as much as most people do.
Oh man, we're gonna lose so many subscribers.
I know. I've criticized Brad Bird on the internet before, and it's sort of an insane thing. But this movie I like a lot, and I think you're completely right that it has like all these elements in it that are really cool and really meant to draw people in and be a thing for people to really appreciate about this movie. I think that, like I said, there's so much that's fantastic. There is an element of this movie. I guess I'll just open up with this part. I've always found this movie kind of angry, like from a directorial voice, that there's this element of the movie, the whole like being super versus mediocrity element in this movie that is really emphasized in this whole thing, particularly in the way that Mr. Incredible feels throughout his existence, and Dash and everything, where they are Superman being forced into the role of Clark Kent and really grinding under that sort of that trap that's occurring, which is interesting to think about if you think, make a comparison with whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow, where he is he is in that role, like spoiler for that comic, but he is perpetually in the civilian identity at the end of that story, and is fine with it, and it's seen as sort of like his happy ending. But here it's not a happy ending for this character and for his family as a whole, especially his son Dash. So we've got that element going on there. And then you got this sort of element with Syndrome, who could be read as sort of like, well, what if Jimmy Olsen went evil? Who wants to remove the super from the world. Like, he wants to make everything mundane. He has the line where, like, when everyone's super, no one will be. Like, there's that element to the character, which, while he is the villain of the piece, there is, I think, a lot of this text. I mean, I would say that he specifically is supposed to be the villain of the piece. That in that, what he is saying is the bad idea. The movie is all about like grinding under pressure to be mediocre when you could be incredible if you were allowed to be, if you really like took it by the reins. And I find that like interesting, but it also like just comes off as like such a message movie from Brad Bird, that it does get in the way of my enjoyment to a degree, just because like it feels angry and it doesn't feel quite as optimistic about it all as it should be.
There's a sort of like Ayn Rand undercurrent in there that's been talked about. I think what the way I look at it is, I think there are themes to that. They're just a little muddled or underbaked. So I think this notion of like, don't hide your light under a bushel is a good idea, right? And this comes from look, if you're a nerd who gets beat up by jocks every day, you don't want to raise your hand in class, and even though you know the right answer. Like, that is a very human concept of like, you don't want to stand out because the people that stand out get persecuted. And so I think the movie deals that right. They deal with that through Dash, where he wants to go out for sports. And it's the same thing of like, man, Spider-Man could win all the gold medals at the Olympics if he wanted to, and so they can't let Dash go out for sports through most of the movie, because the fear is he will reveal their identity, which they're not supposed to reveal. So like at the end of the movie, when he is allowed to go out for track, they're basically letting, do good, just don't do superhumanly good. Right. They're still struggling with it.
Yeah. Like I'm not trying to say that this is, and this is honestly why I think that there's more of a perspective from the director leaking through kind of thing in this movie. Like, I don't think it's necessarily like a treatise. Like, it's not an Ayn Rand level of being like, here is like my ethos about everything to the world. But it does feel like Brad Bird, who as a director has faced a lot of like friction with the corporate powers that be. I mean, especially with the Iron Giant, like, you can feel that this is sort of dealing with the world pushing him to be one way, when he is like, I could be fantastic this other way, that if I'm just allowed to be an auteur, is just my sort of stance on this one. And like, it's fine, it's there, the movie is still good. Like, it's a thing that I can kind of like feel in the background that like just bugs me, and I just needed to say it up front, just so that it's not like a thing. I don't want to bury the lead on that one. It's just in there.
Yeah, no, that notion, if everyone's super, no one will be, right? Syndrome's syndrome, to the extent that it's this inferiority complex that, like, if I can essentially give everyone superpowers by turning them into Iron Man, or really probably more himself, just by inventing their way into superpowers with technology, that sort of levels the playing field between them and these naturally superheroic people. I don't think the movie has an answer to the question. Maybe there isn't an easy answer. But it does like to dabble in that question. Fortunately, I think the movie is not bogged down by that. I think there's too much like fun and daring do to be had in it.
Yeah. Oh,
that,
yeah.
Like,
oh, yeah.
it's not the primary, like, it's the driver for some of this stuff, but in a way, it almost like gets backgrounded. That's why I said it's a little muddled or confused. Like, I think if Brad Bird took a stronger stance on, like, how do we solve this problem or what do I really feel about it, it could have given the movie a slightly stronger spine, but maybe at the expense of, you know, some of the fun and more, you know, lighter parts of the movie.
Yeah, I think that the superhero nature of this movie sort of gets in the way of making it too strong of a point. Like, superpowers are great to use as metaphor. I mean, we've got the whole X-Men stuff. Like, using superpowers as a way to discuss social issues without it necessarily being, you know, a social issue kind of thing. You know, it's a little bit more palatable for a younger audience especially. Like, it also prevents it sometimes from having like real world situations here. Like, the superpowered beings do appear to be the like in the service of the government to a certain degree. Like, they have actual superpowers, so Dash, even when he's allowed to compete, has to keep it under reins. Like, he can't, it's not just that like he wasn't allowed to compete and he, you know, when he finally is, he proves himself to be great. Like, he always was going to be better than anyone at that. So I think it does keep it from being like too heavy handed just by virtue of the fact that we've got the superpower thing going on here, and that keeps it also lighthearted and fun, and we get, you know, really cool stuff going on with these characters.
Yeah.
Because like I think this movie, and I think it's funny that this is similar in a way to Darkwing Duck. I think that this movie has a lot of that. You mentioned James Bond. I think that James Bond DNA is sort of what comes first in this, and then the superpowered stuff gets added to it all. Because like you could see how this movie would just be like Spy Kids. Like, if you just take the superpowered stuff away, it could still work as a movie. Versus if you take the government agent, secret identity, like if you take that kind of a vibe for the character away and like you made him more just like straight up Superman, the plot wouldn't work as well. So I think that James Bondness is in there, and like in a world where it's just like, oh, but we're just better spies, or like we're, you know, like the cream of the crop people, like it would feel a bit more heavy handed. But because of superpowers, it makes it more of a fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the government, as you said, they have to be involved so the plot can work. Part of that is just literally like, well, how do these superheroes ever afford anything they're doing? And it's because the movie doesn't come right out and say it, but yes, they are government sanctioned superheroes that, like, when they have to go into hiding, it's the government who pays for their witness protection and coordinates that. You know, there's this guy that they deal with who's kind of their liaison to the government. You know, they work with him. So it adds in this interesting layer of like, well, they're not totally like vigilante freelancers. It kind of adds this nice little like a sub question there. Again, cribbing from Watchmen about like, well, who's actually in charge of these superheroes and who decides who gets to be one and what they get to do. And, you know, the questions that also are still kind of lingering in the second Incredibles movie too, which I know we're not focusing on today, but they do continue that line of inquiry.
Yeah, I think when we talk about the second one, like, it'll be interesting to really compare the arc of them. But this movie stood on its own for 14 years, so I think it's worth it to look at it as a singular piece today. So why don't we just talk for a bit about Mr. Incredible as a Superman analog? Because I think it's worth it. I haven't actually done a video on him, but it's actually always been one I've wanted to do. For a while, it was because I was waiting for Incredibles 2 to come out, and then I just got busy with life, and I haven't written those threads as much, but I've been making the videos. So someday that'll happen. But yeah, so Mr. Incredible, I was watching particularly with like that eye for the character, and I think it works really well. Obviously, he's way less powerful than a Superman type. Like, he bleeds at one point. He does appear to be durable, but it's hard to really tell because it's a cartoon, you know. So like, what would a person survive of like that electroshock thing versus like what can Mr. Incredible survive? But he does seem to be more durable than a person. He gets thrown around a lot. Like, he takes a lot of hits that should kill a person. And yeah, again, it's a Pixar cartoon, but like no one else takes those hits. Or, you know, Elastigirl does, but she's also like clearly super durable. Yeah. And they have suits that make them even more durable. So like, once he's got the upgraded suit, he's definitely tough enough to be in this sort of category. He does, obviously he's got the James Bond kind of stuff. He's got that like that cool car that like is also kind of Batman-y. Like, there's a lot of like just generic superhero mishmash going on here, but generic superhero mishmash is Superman, right? Like most of the tropes of superheroes start with Superman, and then like other ones are could be added in there, but like it's still all Superman, and like that big super strong guy who can like save kittens and also fight all the bad guys, and is very mobile and gets around town and can't be defeated by any sort of physical threat. Like that's Superman here. Like, and what did you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, the assignment was to kind of look at this through a Superman lens, and I was watching it, and like one of the very first things he does in the movie is stop a runaway train, which Christopher Reeve does in the first Superman movie. They're obviously wanting you to draw the comparison, and the way he stops it is also a little bit Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 2.
True.
There's a little of that. Yeah, like as you said, Case, he's super strong, he's super durable. His Clark Kent identity, I love that he is his name is Bob Parr. Like Parr, literally the word for average.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Perfect secret identity name for the family. Also that like he works at an insurance company. His job is ostensibly to help people after they've been injured, not before, right? By saving them. And so I think making him an insurance claims guy is again a very canny addition to the story. And you look at him like when in that first act of the movie, that scene where he's in the boss's office and he's getting a talking to, and he looks out the window and he sees a guy getting mugged, right?
Yeah.
Like there's so much of that like tension of like, I need to go change into my costume. I need to go save that guy. And when he can't do it, he throws his poor Wallace Shawn like through a bunch of walls. In anger. Like they're definitely using all of this Superman stuff to great benefit. Like whether he's at the island lair, all of the things he's doing draw on kind of this Superman archetype and cast it against him as not a loner, right? Superman, he doesn't, I mean, I know they do this stuff in the comics, but basically Clark Kent / Superman is a loner. He can't really be with Lois Lane fully because he's got to maintain his secret identity. He doesn't have kids. Again, I know that over 80 years of comics, they do get into some of this stuff, but like core, like stripped down, like basic Superman is an alien and he's on his own. And here you're like, well, now he's got a family to take care of other supers. And he's got a job to maintain to help, not just for his own like secret identity, because he actually needs that income, right? He needs to have a job to help his family. Like it's not just a disguise. Like the Bob Parr identity has value to him. And so I love how they kind of play with that, even as he's, still like, man, I just got to get back out there and start busting some heads. Like it's a really great version of like, what if we push the Clark Kent identity further to the point where, again, it's now an anchor weighing Superman down as opposed to just like something he does during the day to avoid people noticing him.
Imagine like Superman and Lois, but Clark was the one at home and he was badly out of shape. Lois is the one running the errands and stuff, and Clark is just like, I hate my life. I have to do something, but I can't.
Yeah.
Well, and that is in a way the premise of the second one, where again, Elastigirl is the one who goes out saving the world, and he's stuck at home taking care of the kids.
I have to go save people, but I can't because I have to be at home with the kids. I hate it here.
Well, I will say, I think that the opening act of the movie where he's stuck in this situation, where he's stuck working this terrible job and so forth before he makes the decision to go and engage with this robot mission that is offered to him. Like, I think that is a great short film about just like how crushing like corporate bureaucracy can be on a human soul.
Well,
like
that and like them having like these fantastical lives and them having to like tone everything down and just be your average Joe when they know they're supposed to be doing so much more.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Like, like the level of them being a superhero in disguise and just like hating their job is a fantastic thing to throw out there. Like, that's like a really cool, like, it's the kind of thing that you would see in like an Astro City type thing, where it's like a real, exploration of like, well, what does it mean to be a superhero in the real world kind of thing. Also getting back to like the Watchmen kind of comparison, where it's like, okay, well, how do they make money as a superhero in this, in the real world? Like, well then, I either they're lucky or they figured out something, but like it's a system, and in this case it's his job, and his job sucks.
Well, they also deal with like, so for example, Superman's primary weakness is that he can't be everywhere at once, right? That's how they deal with him being so overpowered, which is like, well, you can save this person or you can save that person, but you can't do both, right? They'll put him in that quandary for dramatic effect. And here that's what's literally happening, which is like he has that moment at work where he wants to save that person being mugged and he can't. And he goes home and he has an argument with his wife, who is also a superhero, but she's also like, hey, you have to take care of our family too. Maybe you shouldn't have intervened here because keeping our family protected is also something you need to do. So saving us versus saving this one person being mugged, there's a lot of that of like, or even the guy who tries to commit suicide and instigates the lawsuits. He's like, he didn't want to be saved. There's a lot of that kind of idea of like, well, we have institutions that are we have police, like we have organizations that their bespoke job is to help people in need. You don't need to necessarily jump in to every situation. Maybe that's a negative sometimes and not a positive. Yeah. And so like Mr. Incredible is in that quandary too throughout the movie.
Yeah, and that is a question that this movie deals with. And again, getting back to this whole sort of, I don't know if it has a final answer for it, because he does need to intervene on certain types of things. Like the big robot ultimately is a threat that everyone needs to intervene on because it's a huge threat. And so it is good that they all come together. And it's still asking the question of like, well, what is the dynamic between your responsibilities to the world versus to your family up until the moment of the end of the fight, or rather at the end when the fight truly begins at the very end of the movie, because they land in the super RV. The incredible RV. They land in that, and
the perfect family vehicle.
Right, exactly. And he's like, I'm going to go alone. And then Elastigirl is like, I'm coming with you. We're going to leave the kids. But they're both trying to leave the kids, and they're both trying to keep the family out of it. They're both trying to protect the family as they see it. And for Elastigirl, that's protecting both Mr. Incredible and the kids at the same time, and by way of having the kids stay back and the two of them going forth. But but both are trying to do this whole dynamic. And then the robot destroys the RV, and the fight has to happen with all four of them involved, which prior to that point they were trying to withhold. So their back ends up against the wall. And so the movie doesn't come down on an actual answer of what is specifically more important, protecting your family versus like contributing to the world in a meaningful way. And that's fine. Like the movie doesn't have to have an answer, but that is the one of the questions that this movie is raising.
Well, also with regards to protecting the kids, you might be able to protect them in this one instance by keeping them out of the fray, but they're also saying, but they're superheroes. They need to be trained. Someday they're going to be the adults, right? So sometimes protecting your kids means putting them in situations where they're going to have to push themselves a little bit. They're going to have to confront something that they are maybe almost ready for, but not quite, in order to learn how to overcome that. So the movie is also saying like, well, no, Dash and Violet, they have superpowers. They can help here. And maybe the right answer is to let them get in there and trust that they're competent enough at this point to handle it. So that's something that Elastigirl's dealing with the whole time too, is like, how much do I let the kids, show off or learn and develop by confronting these things versus how much do I want to keep them sidelined?
Yeah, it's that whole like, do you keep them safe, but do you prevent them from ever thickening their skin? Like, do you keep a bird from learning to fly, even if it might have broken its leg a couple of times in the process? Yeah, it's a tough question that they put forth to Mr. Incredible and to Elastigirl as well.
Yeah.
But these are all interesting burdens to put on a Superman type. Like, these are not things that Superman would just get around. Like, he would be slightly better than Mr. Incredible just because he's slightly faster, and like Mr. Incredible is more of a I was about to say Mr. Incredible is more of a flawed individual. Like, I think he ultimately is the Superman archetype, but he is like a very, arrogant, bombastic version of that, cartoonishly so for the purpose of having the sort of like family dynamic. But he is very competent as a superhero. He never actually screws up terribly as a superhero. Like, he's very good at doing all the things that he needs to do, including like the James Bond style stealth stuff, getting back to that being sort of like in the blood of the series. but like he wins his fights, like even the fight against the upgraded robot, like he's able to get away successfully, like, and like there is a reason that Syndrome is, you know, his biggest fan and is like still gushing about him even when he gets captured, and like even when he gets captured both times. Like Syndrome is like very excited about how cool of a superhero Mr. Incredible is, and like some of that is being told to us rather than shown, but like I think it actually is being shown. Yeah. It's just he's playing the archetype of the goofy dad also, and some of that is through his like character flaws, and so he, like, you know, he just comes off more of like a little bit meatheaded-er than Superman would.
He's a sitcom dad for sure.
Yeah,
right. He's got a little like John Goodman and Roseanne energy.
Yeah. I mean, god damn it, it's Craig T. Nelson. It's goddamn Coach.
Right. Perfect voice cast for this, by the way.
Yeah.
I know they probably wanted to go with someone more famous than Craig T. Nelson or whatever. There's probably a lot of good candidates, but like he's so good. He's so like that kind of bigger like baritone part of his voice. Like he can access some like real good, like when he thinks his family is dead at one point in this movie, like he goes to some cool emotional places. Like when he gets really angry as opposed to like grumpy dad angry, like Craig T. Nelson does a phenomenal job in the role.
Yeah. He also does a phenomenal job as like the excited dad, especially for Dash. Which I've
oh, you must have been booking. How fast were you going?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Or it's like, if you were worried about them, why'd you bring them? It's like they stowed away, and that is the wrong tone, mister.
You're trying to make it have an argument. I'm just happy you're alive.
Like his goofy dad in a good way is great, and that is a nice part of having him still be a competent superhero. I think that there is some media training that sort of makes him come off more of a bumbling goofy dad to us, because that's just how these things are written. But he actually is pretty effective. He just disassociates because he's so miserable in the first act of the movie.
So you're saying he's more Clark Kent than Superman in this part?
I mean, the Clark Kent is not totally a put on. Right, like he is at some point he was a normal Earth person. He's not an alien who pretending to be a mild-mannered reporter, right? So he understands.
No,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like there's no implication that he's got.
They're the X-Men.
Yeah.
In this world, they're the X-Men. They don't explicitly come out and say this, but it seems like everybody who's a superhero is just they develop powers at some point in their life, because that's what they're showing through Jack as well. That like they just awaken with powers at some point.
So what you're saying is we've had the X-Men all along and we didn't even know since 2000. Oh my gosh.
They're among us. Disney had them before they had them. Yeah.
Disney had them before they got them. Huh?
Let's move on to the rest of the family. Now, so there's obviously the Fantastic Four comparison. And I think that is obvious and extremely apt. It's also not that unique. Like the family of superheroes is sure, like the most iconic one is the Fantastic Four, but there's plenty of entries into that pantheon in comics and in other media. I mean, like Christ, Super Sentai alone has like 7 teams that are like all siblings, because that's just how media churns out some of these ideas. Like there's lots
Wonder
of like,
Twin powers activate.
Exactly. There's lots of like family team superhero concepts, and it seems so obvious when you think about it, to do like dad, you know, the parents and then the little kids, and like have this like Keeping Up with the Joneses kind of vibe, but now they're actually super kind of thing. Like those kind of juxtapositions are all in play here, and so that makes a lot of sense. And I think it works. Like that comparison worked fine. The Fantastic Four and classic Superman are actually much more of a kin, especially the Silver Age Superman and this Silver Age Fantastic Four, where it's like, here's big explosive science that we're going to go explore and do weird stuff. You know, it's just very fantastical. And I've always thought that Superman would fit in very well with the Fantastic Four. So that comparison is fine, but obviously their powers are then like all kinds of jumbled on this one. Let's talk about Elastigirl, who I think, yes, obviously there's the Mr. Fantastic comparison because of those powers, but stretchy powers are a time-honored, like arguably the second most famous type of superpower after just like your basic Superman, like I've got some kind of physical augmentation set of powers, and I would lump super speed into that category of like augmented human level powers. Stretchiness kind of comes next in terms of like a thing you can just imagine, and then we get into like energy powers and stuff like that. But it goes back to Plastic Man, and like has deep roots in the Superman pantheon by way of Jimmy Olsen, with his elongated lad stuff, or not elongated lad, pardon me, elastic lad stuff. And that, I think you could play in a world where Mr. Incredible had his version of like Lana Lang, and she got the superpowers at some point, and that and became, but it was a permanent thing, and she just became a superhero. Like, we don't know the backstories for these characters, so it is entirely possible to like create a headcanon where this fits much more into a classic Superman archetype. You know, like, imagine, again, I'm going to reference Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, when Lana and Jimmy like get their superpowers to like go and like defend Superman. Like, you could totally see a world where it's like, okay, well, she got the stretchy powers instead of the superpowers, or, you know, the Superman type powers, and, you know, swapped it, and she's in that position now. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up, and I think it's interesting that if you are looking at this as a Superman fan and not just being like, oh, it's the Fantastic Four but jumbled, you could actually make this sort of fit a Superman headcanon.
Yeah, I mean, Elastigirl, you're right that the Fantastic Four powers have been jumbled a little bit. I think that's mostly just it's a nod that they all have the same power set, just with different people. But the thing with the Fantastic Four as a family is none of them are the offspring of the other ones, right? Here we're dealing with like a nuclear family.
Right.
And that, I'm not aware of any other superhero thing where they've really done something quite like this, where it's, you know, literally, you know, parents and 2.3 kids. And what I love about it here is, by making Elastigirl who she is, like, she's the mom, and in this family dynamic, she's the one who literally has to bend over backwards, you know, be flexible for her other family members. She's the one who's constantly trying to keep it together between her other three family members that all want to go, well, at least Dash and Bob, they want to go off and show how super they are. Violet is, you know, the one who's she wants to be normal. But there's this tension between all of them that mom here is forced to, you know, bend and stretch to try and accommodate everybody. And, you know, in classic superhero fashion, the fantastical is, you know, the metaphorical becomes literal.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like, she's still, though, as a Superman analog, like, she can throw a punch. You know, she is no slouch. And again, in the second one, it's her who has to be more the one going out there doing more of the superhero stuff, because she's very capable on her own. They show that in the prologue here, right?
Yeah.
She's, you know, she's more than capable of handling things on her own.
I mean, she seems to be like, they established pretty clearly at every point that she's an incredibly competent superhero. Like the whole thing with her having like a pilot buddy from back in the day,
Yeah.
like, and they show a framed picture of her in like pilot gear. Pardon me. Yar. Here be Elastigirl. But anyway, so, you know, we established that she has like all these like skills. She mentions that she can fly jets. She just can't fly a rocket. And you know, they just like establish her as being like this woman of action, and also very flexible, and apparently quite durable. Like there's quite a few things, like hits to her, that are pretty heavy ones, and you buy it because she's flexible. She can take the punch. Like, she rolls with it. She stretches to accommodate it. It all makes a lot of sense. Doug, you are dead on in terms of like the powers being like each one having the metaphorical role in the family. Like, Violet is trying to blend in, so she has the invisibility powers. Dash is the kid with the hyperactive kid running around. Like these powers are all very one-to-one in terms of their dynamic, the metaphor becoming literal. And it is a good point that, you know, Elastigirl is the one who has to be bending over backwards. I think that's an excellent an excellent point to bring up.
Yeah, I mean, she is shown to be, as you said, very competent. In a way, there's an implication that she's even more clever and better at this than her husband, who's a little more of the blunt instrument. You know, they play with that a little bit, that maybe she's just a little bit craftier than Mr. Incredible is. What I love is, you know, when they do all come together, especially in that fight in the jungle, like that hero shot of like the four of them, you know, standing there, you know, ready at action. Like, when they do come together as a family, it's like you see they are stronger together than they are apart, and they're very good apart. You know, so it's a great. She is really the one who kind of ties things together. Also, just Holly Hunter is a great actress, and my favorite impression that my daughter does is she when she saw this movie when she was 4 and she started doing it. I'm like, that's actually pretty good. Wow. So she's got the esh sound pretty good.
Man, I do also want to bring up as a couple. I do very much appreciate this is the classic Pixar. We've got jokes for the parents kind of movie, and there's quite a bit of innuendo between the two. That
not innuendo, heat, like actual like,
heat. Yeah,
yeah. She pinches his ass from across the room. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and it didn't mean as much to me when I was like, a teenager when this movie came out, but as like an adult who is married, like it's like, oh yeah, you do have like that kind of a dynamic, and that is different than like flirtiness. It's like it's there's a different kind of flirty. You're allowed to be a different kind of flirty when you're like married, and so like they've got that kind of a dynamic. It's very true, which I really appreciate.
Oh yeah, when he starts working out and getting back in shape, she's like, oh, she takes notice. Like she's definitely, she cares deeply for him. And like for that moment where she thinks maybe he's had a dalliance with Mirage, like she gets good and angry about that. But yeah, I that character, I don't know really what her role. I feel like that character is also a little underdeveloped because I keep thinking, is she going to have superpowers? She never exhibits any, but I don't know.
Oh, Mirage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know. She's got the card that has like the weird Mirage effect going on it, but it is hard to say if she has any actual superness to her. Like she's a very classic kind of, again, femme fatale, getting back to that James Bond kind of dynamic for the piece, which wouldn't require her to, but
it would make sense for. Yeah, it makes sense for her to not. I imagine Syndrome would not want any actual people with superpowers around. He's doing his best to eliminate them.
Right. So it's a good question though, and she certainly has like the vibe of one, or maybe it's a tech-based thing because of Syndrome specifically, like whatever she's got going for her, because she's his lieutenant, so it would make sense for her to have like some kind of gadgets, but yeah, she's never really established as having it. She's mostly just the assistant to be the liaison for Syndrome, so that we don't see him until later in the movie.
Coming back to the family, I guess going to the next one would be Violet. Like I really like this character, and I also am very impressed because Sarah Vowell, who plays her, is not an actress. She's an author, kind of just this quirky, nerdy lady with this odd NPR voice, and she turns in a great performance. And they push her even farther in the second one of like, man, she must. I don't know if she took an acting class, but like she's awesome in both movies. Like really getting this like angry teenage, frustrated girl like character just dead on perfect.
Yeah. Did either of you see the show Pin 15?
No.
So it has a very similar kind of energy where it's just this like early teenager awkward girl like vibe for the characters. Like so the Pin 15 is a TV show about two comedians are playing themselves as 15-year-old high school students in the 90s, or I think it's like 2000 exactly, pre 9/11. And so it's just like this very like for me like retro nostalgia vibe, because I'm like, oh my god, like it's all this NSYNC stuff. Like my sister was super into that. All the girls I knew were like and my wife loves it because it like feels like super true to her. Anyway, that's just the vibe I would bringing over here, wherein it's also about the awkward teenage girl experience, which is being done incredibly well. You hit the nail on the head that Sarah Vowell does a fantastic job conveying a character who is just doesn't want to be there, wants to blend in. Again, her superpower is that she can go invisible. She wants to be a wallflower. And then and then by way of sort of accepting her powers, she learns to shield herself from it all and be able to like stand out in public and be visible. And I think it's a nice arc for the character. She's obviously less flashy than Dash, but it's a good big sister role and a good arc for the character.
Oh, she's got those force fields, right? Again, I don't want people getting inside, right? That's what that is. Stay away. That metaphorically, that's there. She wants to just try and deal with her crush on Toady Ridinger. Like that's her world, and unfortunately, superheroics come calling. But I love that she really she also accepts her older sister role. Like she rises to the occasion when they're on that island, and she has to start going, okay, guess what, Dash? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take matters into our own hands a little bit. And by the second one, she's very much like, no, you can't leave me out. Right. We're all in this. We're superheroes. Don't put us back in the closet. Basically, like I loved her arc throughout both films, but especially here, which, as you said, like this is like wallflower learning not to be a wallflower.
Yeah, she's very good at taking on a role. Like when she puts on the mask for the first time and like has that sort of like heroic standing like shot when her mom leaves for the first time, you can see that that's giving her strength. Like taking on the role allows her to focus her strength and like really feel who she is for the first time, and like that becomes her thing. Like the confidence she builds along the way. Like it is interesting. I know that they're not having a conversation in this movie, especially not in 2004, about like masking, but there is kind of that vibe for this character, which I find fascinating as someone who is like neurodivergent. Like I relate to the character in that regard, I guess, is what I was getting at.
I mean, she wants to blend in.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Her mom gives her like when you were talking about that scene where they're standing outside the cave talking, her mom gave her the confidence to like actually be who her mom sees her as being. Because before that, we don't really see her practicing like with her powers or anything at all. She's always like, oh, I'm just gonna pretend I don't exist. I'll be over in the corner. But after that, she's actually like practicing her shielding on the fire. She's practicing her shielding on the smoke, and she's actually trying to be active with it from that point forward. And that gives her the confidence to do more and more stuff later. Like when she jumps out the bushes and shields Dash from the bullets. She's being active from that point forward.
Yeah. And it's interesting to note that prior to her getting her suit, her powers weren't that useful. Like she wasn't that good with her force fields, and her invisibility she couldn't actually take advantage of because her clothes stayed visible. So it is interesting that like again taking on the superheroic identity allows her to really exude all of who she can be. And it's, you know, again getting back to this whole theme about like the characters who are innately exceptional being allowed to be exceptional.
Yeah, no, she definitely turns all of that on, right? Once she has the super suit that allows her to be purely invisible without being naked, you know, she uses it as you said. You know, she starts practicing her force fields and how to use them. The only time we really see her use the force fields much earlier in the movie is when she and her brother are having that argument at dinner, and she like just uses one to just have him like run face first into it. Like that feels very like real sibling behavior of like, I'm just going to use these powers to like give you a hard time, little brother. You know, she bristles at the fact that like Jack is seemingly normal, right? That she resents that, you know, a little bit like, you know, he's normal. He's not even toilet trained, you know. Obviously we'll find out by the end of this movie, he is a god. But like, I love that dynamic, right? That's like, these powers are not really good for very much other than minor mischief at best, and mostly within the house, being turned loose into the real world to do, in theory, what they were meant to do, which is protect each other and others.
Yeah. Yeah, and like, as you say, the minor mischief, like we should talk about Dash now, because talk about a character who his powers are just being used for minor mischief. Now, I have made the comparison between characters who have purely super speed as their thing and as being really good examples of the Superman analog that often get overlooked as that, because Flash is like a very clear fork of the Superman analog, the speedster archetype specifically. But I think that is there. Like Dash. So we'll get into his actual character stuff, but I do want to like throw out this like pet theory I have. Dash and Mr. Incredible theoretically could have the exact same superpowers. Dash is very small and very light at this point and has not filled out, and Mr. Incredible is very big and very heavy. And it is entirely possible that those same sort of like super strong muscles are being used for speed because he happens to be like 7 versus like or 10 or whatever age he's supposed to be, versus then like this oversized heavy frame may only be able to move at speeds that are slightly faster than a normal human, but is able to do these like huge feats of strength. Like it's possible that these are actually the same superpowers.
Yeah, I'd buy that. I mean, he's a 4th grader. They tell us. So he's small.
So he's 10. Yeah.
You mentioned like he's sort of like a hyperactive kid, like that he's all over the place. I see that. I just sort of like look at him as a comparison to my own son, who is 5, and when he pretends he has superpowers, he lets us know he has super fast speed, and he is a little blonde kid who is in fact pretty speedy for his age. He's pretty good at running around, and so like when I look at him, it's like, wow, that like. Again, my older daughter and my younger son, like they have very much like a Violet and Dash kind of dynamic in some ways. And there's just something about being a kid that I think it's the idea of like, I want to be able to fly. I want to be able to run so fast I can fly. I want to be able to go anywhere when I want to, because so much of being a kid is being corralled. We're all getting in the car now. We're all going here. We have to be at this place by 10 o'clock. Come on, let's go. Let's go
Sit
brush
in
your teeth.
Seat at school. Like be at your desk.
Yeah, and I mean, so much of being like, when I see like my kids freak out, it's often like I have to remember, like, oh, right, they don't get a lot of control over things right now. So when they're losing this one thing that, like, I don't see why that's so important to them, it doesn't seem like a big deal. It's because it's something they have control over that I am now further encroaching on as their parent. And so, like, Dash here, he's acting out at school at this point, right? He's putting a tack on the teacher's chair because he knows he can get away with it. And it's obviously not the first time he's done something like this. He's missing out on his chance to shine, which is what he deliberately, he explicitly says that, I want to go out for sports. I want to be special. Why can't we be special? And he's the first one that actually is sort of articulates that notion of, like, because his mom says we can't, everyone's special, Dash. And he says, well, that's another way of saying nobody is.
Right. Yeah.
He's the one who hits on that idea first in the movie. And it kind of going to another Superman analog. Maybe we'll get to an episode on this someday, but Roald Dahl's Matilda, like, deals with that too. And, like, the musical even more so, the saying of, like, all kids are special, but actually one of them here is a super powered genius, right? That's where Dash fits in here. He is this super powered kid that, like, out of all of them, even more so than his dad, I think his dad is like, I want to use superpowers because I know it's my responsibility to help others, and I have to watch this guy get mugged and I can't do anything about it. Dash is like, he doesn't care about helping others at this point. I just want to run fast because I'm a kid and I want to run fast. That's what I do.
Like my toddler has very similar energy of just, like, wanting to run everywhere and climb up everything. And, like, if she could run across water, she would. I do want to bring up that the trickster archetype is a part of the Superboy character. Like the classic Silver Age Superboy had a little bit of a tricksterness to him when he was first introduced, and so you could see that also at play here with, like, the son of Mr. Incredible is putting tax down on his teachers' seats and everything. Again, like, some of this is a little bit of a reach to try to make it purely a Superman look, but these characters, I mean, like, look, there's a poster of Mr. Incredible in Mr. Incredible's office that is him snapping the chains, and it's very much like that Superman 1, like, back cover, or is it Action Comics 1? Either way, the Superman snapping the chains, like him, flexing his chest so much that they all burst. That's here. Like, they are leaning into the character being Superman-esque, and the whole family being Superman-esque. So saying that Dash is Superboy-esque isn't that big of a stretch.
Agreed.
Certainly, but before we move on to other sort of, like, things in this universe, I do want to, like, circle back to Mr. Incredible with one point. I like his first costume more.
The blue one?
Yeah, the blue one. I mean, I'm partial to like blue and black costumes. It looks a lot like the Invincible, like, black suit that he wears. Not the one that he wears his main costume, but his, like, alternate look that he wears for some of the run, and what will be his costume in the next season of the show. It's very similar in that, right down to the fact that it has a stylized eye built into the body of the suit. So it's a good look. I like it a lot. I don't mind the red suit. It just looks way more like Fantastic Four-ish, even though it's got the underwear over it, which, like, keeps the Superman kind of effect going for it all. I like I said, I just, like, kind of prefer the first one is all.
Yeah, it's almost a little more of a classic Batman look than it is Superman, right? With the gloves.
Yeah. There's, like, some Nightwing going on with it.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I didn't realize that one.
Well, the car is also Batman too.
Yeah. The car is very Batman. Very Batman / James Bond, which, like I said, I think is a lot of what's going on here. And like I said, similar to with Darkwing Duck, was originally supposed to be 00 Duck. It was supposed to be a James Bond parody show that then they added the superhero element to differentiate it so that they weren't getting sued by MGM. They changed it to Darkwing Duck to get away from that whole situation.
That, and also the fact that Tim Burton had just come along and rocked everyone's world with Batman, and they're like, well, we're not going to let that go unnoticed.
Sure.
So,
yeah. Like, again, all these are taking what's in the zeitgeist and pulling it in. And The Incredibles is doing a ton of that. So let's talk about Syndrome for a moment. I made a comparison with him to Jimmy Olsen earlier, and I think that is an apt comparison. Like, he is supposed to be this, like, fanboy, biggest fan character with a shock of red hair.
Like, it applies more to fandom these days than it did back then.
Well, there's definitely a little knock there at fandom very much. He's like, I'm your number one fan. And then the next thing he does is boot him out of the car. There's a little bit of like making fun of fandom a bit, but what they're doing is they're saying, well, we take Jimmy Olsen, Superman's biggest fan, and turn him into Lex Luthor.
Right.
Which is where he is at the end of the, by the time we re-encounter him as an adult, that's who he is. He's running this semi-secret corporation. He's got all the gadgets. He's dead set on killing all the supers. He's very much that character. And what I love is that he's also got that kind of Gene Hackman-esque, like a little bit of like the overconfidence to make up for a lot of inadequacy.
Yeah,
because he's not competent.
But he is a fanboy though, and that actually does give him some degree of competence. Like the robot that he keeps iterating on, like, does account for the weaknesses of all the people that it fights. Like when he's just Buddy at the beginning of the movie, he's like, I know all your moves. Like is a detail there. He's such a nerd. He does have at least the ability to predict, like, okay, well, this is what these supers can do. Now he doesn't predict it sufficiently. He underestimates everyone because he's overconfident by way of him being, this prick.
No, he's just a huge prick. That's a good word for him.
Yeah, and especially with like Mr. Incredible, we see that yes, he was overconfident with his original robot. He thought that was easily going to handle Mr. Incredible, and it doesn't. And so he's fascinated by it, but he iterates on it. So when he's allowed to play by his rules, where he's able to take and iterate and make better versions of this like destructive robot again and again and again, and not actually have his skin in the game, he is able to be very successful. It's when he tries to actually put himself out there that he's terrible at this job. Like he's clearly not, in a controlled environment, he is good, but in the wild situation of even his own robot like at play, which they set up very well, because the whole cover story for the robot was that it got to be smart enough to think on its own and blah, 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 blah. Like that's the cover story for why Mr. Incredible goes in to fight the robot in the first place. That becomes the actual plot at the end of the movie.
Well, that also, what you're seeing is like Syndrome's thing is right. He's very observant of superhero strengths and weaknesses, and he calibrates what he's doing to try and counter those things. But what he doesn't do is ever examine his own strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
That's what leads to it. Right. He's not thinking. Twice in the movie, he is foiled by the fact that he has a cape, which Edna Mode points out is like, she obviously figured that out. I never designed superhero capes anymore because of what happened, right? And she stopped doing it, right? It seems like something every superhero knows not to wear a cape anymore. That's just stupid, right?
Yeah.
Every mistake he makes is because he's not thinking about himself. I designed this robot. It's perfect. It can't fail. And the first thing it does is quite by accident, essentially just disables the controller that he was using to pretend to fight it.
Well, by accident, in the sense that the robot intended to go for it.
Doesn't it it gets knocked out. It sees it and knocks it out of his hand, right?
Yeah.
Syndrome did not account for that because he's not thinking about, this would be a weakness if the controller is something that is, literally an object that could be knocked out of my hand. I could have built it into my suit. I could have had a backup for that controller, something. He didn't think of any of that.
He didn't have a second gauntlet that had the same controls. He immediately was negated in that situation. I do want to bring up two Alan Moore comparisons to what you were just discussing. So, the Watchmen comparison. So with Dollar Bill, the no capes thing happens there, where his cape gets stuck inside the rotating doors of the bank that he's supposed to be protecting, and it gets shot in the face. Now that doesn't happen on screen or on like in panel. It happens. They say that's what happened to Dollar Bill. They don't show us that because that's pretty horrific. But that's one part there. And then the robot at the end feels very much like the Alan Moore Captain Britain run with the I forget the name of the robots, or that Madge and Jaspers like sets loose. The Fury, pardon me. The Fury. Where it eventually realizes that like, my master is also a super. I should go after it as well. And that's what happens with this robot going after Syndrome.
I think the robot is also an analog to the squid at the end of Watchmen, right? It's this huge threat that's dropped onto a city by the mastermind, only to essentially aggrandize himself as a show, right? So it's very much, drawing on that part of Watchmen. And of course, just the general mystery of like, hey, all the superheroes had to go into hiding because of the law, and now they're being hunted down and killed, like straight out of Watchmen.
Yeah. Now, I will say Brad Bird supposedly didn't base this on Watchmen.
That's baffling. There's no, like, he literally has a scene where like Parr's boss, Wallace Shawn, the great Wallace Shawn, is literally starts going into a clock metaphor. This company is like an enormous clock. He goes through the whole thing.
I know. I'm just saying,
Watchmen.
supposedly, like, at least like that's what's on Wikipedia. But like either way, it's in the zeitgeist. Like, is the bigger point. Like the fact that they're trying to say the same things, whether or not they're influenced by each other. Not the point. It is saying very similar things. It has a very similar structure of like the pageantry of a superhero, with the squid and, in Adrian Veidt versus here with Syndrome and the robot, like, and how that goes out of control, like how you can't fake it. You have to be an authentic hero. You have to like doing it the fake or the wrong way is ultimately going to blow up in someone's faces, be it that this robot goes out of control and defeats Syndrome, or be it that the giant squid plot killed a lot of people and ultimately probably everyone's going to find out about it.
Well, you also have to, the robot sort of defeats Syndrome. It knocks him out of contention, but his actual defeat comes later, which is a great, like, you think everything's over, kind of horror movie jump scare, where they come home, shh, the baby's sleeping. Like, I love that shot of him because he's like, you really get to see how evil he is. It's like, I'm going to threaten the baby because, fuck it. That's all I got left. You killed my robot, so I'm just going to kill your youngest kid.
Well, not kill. Like,
I'm going
to
try.
Raise him as my own. And
be my Robin.
Yeah.
Right. I'll make him into the fanboy kid. But yeah, it's a great moment.
Yeah, this of course brings up Jack, who we have not discussed as part of the family because he's not part of the active family throughout the majority of the movie. But Jack is this baby who, of course, on Disney Plus, the avatar for my daughter's profile is the Jack picture. She even has wears a head like a hair bow or hair pigtail, like a center ponytail, just like Jack. Like we do that all the time. Despite the fact that she has way more hair now, she still looks very much the same. But anyway, yeah. So Jack has, as you alluded, godlike powers. He can do anything. It seems he can shapeshift into multiple powered forms, including a flaming one. So we get the Human Torch analog in this group.
Yeah, he hulks out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess he's the Thing also of the team, even though Mr. Incredible, being the big strong guy, has like similar roles. The fact that he's not a hideous monster, whereas Jack can be a hideous monster. In
the second one, I believe they say he has 17 documented powers by the end of the movie.
I feel like they expound upon it in the second movie. Because wasn't there like a whole thing with the raccoon in the second movie I forgot about?
Yeah, he ends up in a fight with a raccoon in the backyard, which is very funny. There's also a short, I forget what it's called, but it's like, if you remember in this movie, like they leave Jack with the babysitter, and that's when Syndrome comes over, right? There's a short you can find on Disney Plus, which is like what's happening back home with the babysitter and Jack, and like because you can hear in the movie like she calls the babysitter, and the babysitter is frantically like, you can barely make out what she's saying, but she's terrified of what Jack is doing. And here you get to see the other end of the conversation as he's like phasing through walls, and like he can duplicate himself, and like he can shrink and grow. Like he can do just literally any superpower. They just go, yeah, fuck it, Jack can do that too.
So
it's very funny. It's a joke that he's less of a metaphor. I think that it's just a fun joke that like he's got a million powers whatever the situation calls for.
He could be anything. He has the potential of being a baby.
He's straight up as Franklin Richards.
Well, also that.
Yeah, and he helps defeat Syndrome at the end, of course, because Syndrome freaks out. Although what finally does Syndrome in at the end is the cape, which is a great Chekhov's gun there from Edna Mode with the cape thing.
Yeah. Why don't we talk about Edna for a minute? So great performance by Brad Bird. I am capable of complimenting Brad Bird. I just need to say that part out loud. Great performance by Brad Bird in the role. As someone who is a big fan of shows like Project Runway, I do love me a catty fashion designer like this. It's fantastic. It's a Devil's Wear Prada, but like a good character and like clever with all the superhero stuff. I love her.
Oh yeah, she's an unqualified win. So what a great character! Like again, she's Q, right? She's the person who designs all the gadgets. But they said, well, what if that job was held by a fashion designer? She makes all the suits and the gadgets, and she shows off like, here's the suit for you. Like it's flame retardant. They have like shoot jets of fire on it. All the different things it can do. She's just as funny in the second movie. Like it's a really great chance to make what would ordinarily be boring exposition really fun.
Her dialogue with every character, where like when she's with Mr. Incredible and it's like
My God, you've gotten fat.
Hey, I'm retired. Well, yes, that. But where it's like,
darling.
So am I, darling. Yet here we are. And she has this like wicked smile. It's fantastic. I love the character. It's such a fun take on, like, this fashion designer type character is such a fun concept for a superhero piece where she's like talking about the fashion of superheroes. So actually, fun fact, speaking of Project Runway, so Tim Gunn used to do a show with the editor for our video clips, Alan Kistler, on superhero fashion on YouTube. So that's just a fun little detail out there. So shout out to that. But yeah, so it was a fun series where they looked at superhero fashion, and it's like fun to look at like superhero fashion like this to like have a conversation about, like, the capes part of it is really good. It would have been nice if they had like a little bit about like why the trunks were there, because like the circus strongman kind of aspect would be nice to mention, just because like, hey, if you're doing a superhero thing about fashion, you might as well talk about like the elephant in the room for any conversation about superhero costumes. I just feel like that's the omitted one, because they make sense. Like so you might as well just explain what the reason is, and people will stop being like, why are they wearing their underwear on the outside?
I mean, you wouldn't.
Look, you got to protect your junk if you're a superhero. That's important.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, it's that stuff. Even with the super fabric that Edna has come up with, like, Mr. Incredible has the chance of ripping it. Like, let's be real. Like, he bends over, he squats the wrong way. Like, he needs to wear those trunks.
Yeah, well, an Elastigirl needs maximum like, she's going to stretch herself into all kinds of shapes, so she needs some clothes that can really bend and take whatever punishment she's going to dish out.
Yeah.
Especially when she's holding up a rocket.
Or being a human parachute,
Right. Exactly. Or being a boat, or, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense for her to be durable, but it's great that her outfit is durable as such. I do love that the Dash costume is explicitly like designed for his friction, which is a very like speedster kind of costume detail for characters. The whole like Flash ring costume, like pop out of the ring and has like this like fabric that is like super resistant to friction, has always been like a part of the character, and it's like nice to have that reflected on a big screen superhero suit.
You mean you don't want it to be made out of what was it rocket ship parts or whatever that crap was, the Snyderverse thing?
Oh yeah, like his like weird stitch together. I thought you were about to say like unstable molecules, which is like the Fantastic Four costumes are made out of a fabric that is able to infinitely stretch and reconfigure based on superpowers. So in theory, we're kind of seeing that, but with Edna, obviously, no one here is Mr. Fantastic, and like that role has been offloaded to the Edna character. But yeah, I just wanted to shout her out because she's great, and people would find it insane if we didn't bring her up. Jmike, was there anything in particular that you wanted to bring up about The Incredibles?
I felt really old watching this movie because this came out when I was 13.
God, you're so young.
13, 14, I want to say.
I mean, you feel old, but like I was in college when this movie came out.
I was in grad school. So, yeah.
Oh, man. And I was like, oh, man, it was like all the memories hit me when I was watching this. I remember watching this for the first time with my family. We all like sat around the TV and we were watching it. We were all laughing and thinking. And I immediately fell right back into that role. And I was like, oh, man, this is great. All the member berries. I was like, oh man, but this movie it's starting to show its age a little bit with the animation and stuff.
Yeah. Okay, that is one I wanted to bring up, the animation, especially when you compare it with Incredibles 2.
Yeah, I was like, wow, this is because I was watching. I came across some animators on YouTube the other day, and they did like a little short, and I was like, wow, this is kind of like what they were doing back in 2004, but like way better. And I was like, that's what people are doing now in like their free time. And you're like, oh wow, we've come a long way in 20 years.
Yeah, this was incredible when it came out. No, pardon the pun, but yeah, but it is definitely showing it's 2004. Like it's certainly they are doing a lot of tricks to make it look as good as possible. But there are some clear spots and clear things to look for. Liquid surfaces are a big one. Like I noticed that there was often like a ripple that didn't quite correspond to any sort of natural flow. Like in Edna's office, for example, they have like a walkway with like two ponds on the left and right side, and they're flowing as if it's like an outdoor like lake or something like that, like is the ripples that are going on, which doesn't make sense for the room that they're in. So like physics for a lot of those kind of things are kind of funky.
Like, yeah.
Skies,
the ocean scenes.
Skies look interesting. Like they just look like an earlier kind of animation style. Like there's just like something off, and I don't know what the texturing or shading or gradients that are being used on it. It just doesn't. They don't quite look up to date anymore. So you're right. I like there's certainly spots that it shows.
I mean, it still looks great. But
Yeah,
like,
definitely,
it's
definitely
starting
looks
to
great.
age.
Yeah. So I was looking at the fabric for the Incredibles costumes. I noticed has this sort of like unreal kind of red textureness to it that I was staring at, and I couldn't tell if that was an intentional thing or if it was a limitation of the technology for the characters. Because you compare it with Mr. Incredible's suit when he is, or like the black suit, which has like this very Kevlar-y kind of texture to it that you can just see. You can see the sort of like fabric design to it versus the red suit. And maybe that's just because you have like way more action scenes with them in the red suits, especially the other characters. It allows them to like the sort of like texture being not quite real makes it like less, I don't know, easier to animate. Maybe was just a thought.
This is just a thing with animation in general, like 2D versus 3D, which is that 2D animation will always look gorgeous, you know, from the first time it was made. Like Sleeping Beauty is still one of the most gloriously gorgeous things ever put on screen, and it was done in 1960 or something. You know, it just absolutely looks incredible. Here, like, because of advances in computer technology, you can definitely, you know, gauge how old something is by how it looks. For me, the issue with the Incredibles visuals, they are stylized, which helps it not.
It does,
that helps. Mm-hmm. You can kind of go, well, it's kind of an artistic choice, to the point where I think Incredibles 2, while it looks better, does not look out of place with this one. The way, let's say, like Toy Story 4 looks very different than, you know, Toy Story 1 or 2. But the thing that I noticed, because this studio, like Pixar, is still, you know, they were still at the vanguard of this stuff. Like Finding Nemo, which was released the year before this, is still one of the most beautiful things ever put on screen. Like, it still works, the original. Mm-hmm. What is here is they developed a technology for this movie that would help them kind of simplify and streamline creating human faces, where it's basically a character creator from like a Dark Souls game, where you just slide the eyes around. Okay, we want to put the eyes this far apart and do this with the nose. And they were able to do that to make it so they could make crowds more easily, as opposed to having to quickly generate lots of people. There are places where that falls down, where like Mr. Incredible encounters these two cops right at the beginning of the movie, and their faces look freaking weird, and they look too similar to each other. And so there's a little bit of that of like, you needed to differentiate these people, because you look at, like, say again, like Wallace Shawn's character, he's very distinctive and he looks great. Like, he is this tiny little human cartoon. Or Edna Mode, like, where they spent the time to really make the characters distinctive. They look awesome. Like Mr. Incredible's face is designed after a Roman helmet. That's what they explicitly went for, and you can tell from the shape. Like, so when they spent the time to really craft stuff, it looks great. But where they did use a shortcut here and there, that is, I think you can kind of tell now, 20 years on.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, or rather, like you said, the stylized element like makes it look particularly good in retrospect. Like, it doesn't look like offensively bad, which some CG looks offensively bad.
It's not Jimmy
now.
Neutron, right?
Right, you know, like,
I mean, we're not comparing like N64 graphics to like stuff nowadays. It doesn't look that bad. It just looks. You
can see it. Yeah, like when you see like all the foliage, like when they're on the island or
the
like outside of Edna's. Yeah, or the hair.
The island is definitely Donkey Kong Country. Like, that's where it takes place.
Yeah. There's a shot when the two kids start running away from the robot bird right before the hovercrafts start chasing them, which looks very much like a video game because the bird is following them, and it looks just like Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Which is fine. Like, this looks good. It's a good looking. It's a great looking 2004 CGI movie. Like, it's fantastic in that. It's just like, now you can see the seams, and especially like you said, like with Incredibles 2, like they don't look distinctly different, but you can tell Incredibles 2 just looks like way better in terms of like what they're capable of doing in terms of CG.
It's a little more polished, and there's certain sequences that are a little stylized. There's a scene where Mrs. Incredible goes out, like, tracking the bad guy at night through the city, that, you know, has a little more like pop to it in the way it looks. There's a lot of parts of that movie that are set at sea that, like, you know, you're just noticing the way just the water physics and stuff, like, it's just, you know, it's advanced. That movie was made 10 years later and with better technology, and you can see that they made those advancements. But in terms of the stylized look of the characters and the world, they kept that consistent. And because I think it's just the same way that, like, this is based on, you know, the Batman animated series and the Fleischer cartoons on which that draws, like, flattening that stuff a little bit for the sake of, hey, it's a comic book. helps preserve this movie so that even those little flaws don't really detract from the fact that it still looks great.
Yeah. Yeah, like we keep saying, it looks fantastic, and they did a great job with it all. Like, Brad Bird is a hell of an animation director. He's a good director of live action, but a hell of an animation director, and made excellent, judicious choices with how things look that really prevent it from being distracting to see the march of time. It is there.
Yeah.
But it is way less so than, like you said, like a Toy Story.
Well, I think that's a big mark of a director who knows what they're doing in terms of advanced technology. Like, there's a lot of like kind of stuff around the internet about like, why did CGI look so good 20 years ago and it looks crappy now? And it's because like you look at like Terminator 2 and Jurassic Park, and like they still hold up. They look incredible. Like, those dinosaurs are goddamn real dinosaurs, and you can't convince me otherwise. And it's because James Cameron and Steven Spielberg, they knew the limits of their technology, and they said, we're going to have to work with that so that we want it to look great. Here's how we have to do it within those limitations. And once CGI got good enough to the point where there were no limitations, people started being less judicious, and they just were using it everywhere until everything is now this pixel soup that is just not nearly as compelling as when, say, I don't know, like Davy Jones in the second Pirates movie, and you're like, holy shit, Bill Nighy has an octopus for a face and it's real. You know, like and there's that in The Incredibles as well. Like, there's that sense of like, yeah, Brad Bird is, as you said, he's a phenomenal director of animation. He's even his like episodes of like The Simpsons are great. Like, he knows how to frame a shot, how to set up a sequence of shots for, like, say, an action sequence or whatever it might be. He's really, really good at like the storyboarding part of it, the planning, so that the final thing looks great and still holds up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Doug, is there anything that you wanted to bring up that we have not discussed at this point?
I kind of want to talk about how the movie ends. We've talked about it a little bit with this battle with the Omnidroid. We haven't really talked about Frozone, but who's great. We could spend a little time on him. But before we get to Frozone, this battle with the Omnidroid, like, the Omnidroid itself, I don't think is that interesting. It's just a big old robot. But
yeah,
what it represents,
it's simple. It's a big circle with tentacles that come out of
it. Setting aside the design of it or the fact that it's not a personality, what I love is the movie has been toying with this question, and the franchise toys with this question, like, do we need superheroes? Where do they fit into society? But this is sort of like this great moment of like, well, when the shit hits the fan, what are we going to do? And like, watching them come together, it's the great moment of them, like, they're truly like at their best as a family fighting this thing. And even in the middle of that fight, I think Mr. Incredible still, like, because he's reeling from the fact that he thought his whole family had died, like, is still trying to control, like, you guys get out, I'll handle this, right? And then they come in and go like, nope, you need us. We got to do this together. It's a great moment for them. And then the final ending, like the battle with Syndrome, and then the very end where the denouement, where we see them kind of like synthesize their two identities now to a degree where, like, okay, we're, Violet's going to ask Tony Reidinger on the date. Dash is going to compete with sports. The parents are going to cheer him on. But when the Underminer shows up, it's time to suit up. And like, it's a great, like, kind of coming together of all of those things at the end of showing, like, it's not either or. It is both. You are Bob Parr and Mr. Incredible. And there is a way for you to thread that needle and keep us all safe. Like, I just like how they bring it all to a close.
Yeah. We, I mean, we didn't really talk that much about the final battle in the later portion. So yeah, let's spend some time. I think that the actual final fight is a fantastic use of, like, team power moves. Like, they work together so well, and we get a callback in when Bob is actually able to hang out with Dash because he has been laid off from his job and has a ton of money. Mm-hmm. He actually gets to bond with the son, and we see them, like, playing catch and combining their super strength and super speed to do, like, really dramatic versions of catch, and that is in play in the fight, which I think is great. And we get to see them all do, like, their really cool moves. We get to see Dash run on water, and like and then his dad gets to be so goddamn proud of him like, in that moment, like, after the fight. We see, especially like with the rocket, and like, okay, so Frozen slowing them down using the ice, and like Elastigirl is so smart to, like, hold off for, like, the final shot, and like, and then we've got Mr. Incredible, like, holding the rocket ready to, like, go. Like, great team moves, like, wonderful uses of them all, and they're all competent here. Like, Mr. Incredible figures out to use the rocket hand because of his previous encounters with the fight or with that robot, and like is accurate. Like he is a competent superhero, and Elastigirl is a competent superhero, and Frozen's a competent superhero, and the kids are proving themselves to be very competent. Like they're doing great in this role. Like it's a wonderful team battle sequence.
Yeah, that's the fun of any superhero team up, which is like, hey, wait a minute, this power combined with that power, right? Now we get a fastball special. You know,
Yeah.
that's what we're literally what we're doing here. As you said, like he at one point Bob throws the remote for the robot for Dash to catch, and it's that the catch sequence from earlier in the movie, right? Or the way Violet uses her force fields at certain points to block the robot so that her family can do other things while they're, you know, working. So yeah, working in tandem is a lot of fun here. Like I think it's fun to watch them fight it on their own, but those little moments where they combine their powers to do something different, that's like them really working together as a family unit.
Yeah. And it also lets the kids see their parents as cool as they are. Like it's nice, both the group fight earlier, like on the island, and here, like the kids get to see just how competent their parents are in a way that they've never got to see the like why their parents are cool. And this is like a real moment for them to be like, oh yeah, dad might be like the goofy dad, but he's also like the world's greatest superhero, and mom is like the other world's greatest superhero. Like they are extremely capable at all points and do protect them. Like when Violet gets knocked out by the robot, like I know it's like the Omnidroid thing. I have such a hard time like saying that. Like,
The giant robot.
yeah, the robot. It's the robot, the mad robot that fights Superman. The mechanical monster. You know, like Bob catches it. Like he's super strong, and like he's their dad. Like he's going to protect them. Like, and that's a nice moment there.
Yeah, you know, like I said, this is a very satisfying, just from a directorial perspective, it's a satisfying action sequence. It's well put together by Brad Bird. All the little beats of it work together really well. And it's a big, you know, stand up and cheer moment when they finally defeat the thing. And again, the wisdom to have it like, well, let's have one more encounter with Syndrome that's more personal, right? As opposed to just this, like, it's wrecking the city. Now it's like, I'm just going to kidnap your kid and fly away, and none of you can fly, so, you know, which is a thing he pointed out at the beginning of the movie. Like, he's like, you can't fly, but I can. You know, he makes that point, and for them to still kind of triumph over that, which is, you know, throw me. It's literally the fastball special.
It's a fastball special,
Bob,
yeah, I was waiting to say
it. Right? And it's not Bob who goes to say, it's the mom, right, who has to fly up into the air and save Jack. It's a great moment of, like, combining action and horror, again, giving you the one last scare, and allowing them to save their family, even at the expense of their house. Like their home is literally destroyed when the plane lands. Yeah. That is the Incredibles 2 picks up shortly after this, where it's like they're living in motels because this happened. So it's interesting. You know, again, they've sacrificed their normal life. Their house has been destroyed for the sake of being superheroes.
But, and then as you pointed out, we get the 3 months later, and we get to see how they are so enriched by having that duality be embraced, as opposed to trying to subjugate part of it in order to fit in. Like the whole family has really gravitated towards it all. I want to talk about the Dash coming in second thing. I think that is... So there's been this challenge with Superman. In the 80s, they try to make it so that he was like a football star in high school, and they have since like gone back and forth of like, did he actually play football? Did he pretend to play football? Was he like not allowed? Was he like the water boy or something like that? Or like the team manager or whatever, what was his role? And I find it interesting here to be an example of like, okay, we're going to play with him being the athlete, but we're going to have him come in second. It's like in the comic Being Super, which is a Supergirl story, like a Supergirl origin story. They talk about how she's on the track team and she always comes in like second and always runs the exact same race, like literally like to the footfall. Like her time is like perfect. Like she's just so good at not being too impressive, but being a good runner on the team, that she's coming in the exact same time every single time. And you kind of feel like Dash is doing that same thing, where he's like, he is still, he's showing that he is capable, but he is keeping it under wraps in a way that is, I don't know. It's just an interesting detail there. Like how, like if you have superpowers, like how do you keep it like, under wraps, but at the same time still enjoying some of the benefits of it in your normal life. And I think it's a really like specific example of it for the characters, because no one else like Violet's not using her powers for social life purposes, and while probably, I guess, we're gonna deal with a situation where their superpowers become how they have their income, like the parents, like their lives aren't not meaningfully better aside from like household chores and stuff like that because of their superpowers. Dash, however, like has a social standing because of his superpowers. Like he wants to be an athlete because there's a social component to being an athlete, and being a track star has a thing that he'll benefit from. And so, yeah, sure, some of that's energy, but some of that is like how he relates to people. He wants to be able to show off a little bit to everyone and be this extroverted kid. So I don't know. What are your thoughts there? Like the Superman pretending to be second place type Superman. Like how does that scene come off to you guys?
I think it's better than a lot of other recent instances of things like that, where he's told to not participate at all, like you said, because somebody might catch on or somebody might get hurt, because a lot of times he doesn't have a great father figure. But not wink wink. Yeah, but it's good to like you said, have him actually be a part of something, because that's how, like you said, he relates to people, and that's how he's gonna be able to reach out and have friends that he doesn't really have, and that's what's causing him to act out in class, because he can't really relate to anybody, and cause him not to be such a little prick to everybody else that he sees, mainly his teachers.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to imagine his behavior has improved substantially. Although he has the potential of now becoming like the douchebag jock archetype.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
I think he's got a better heart than that. But he is a little prankster.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie doesn't have an answer for this in a way, because we as a society don't have an answer for this, right? I mean, this is part of the debate going on right now with trans athletes, which is, if I was to take the opposing viewpoint and take the horrendous bigotry out of it, the concern is, well, a person who is born male would have a genetic advantage by being bigger and stronger than the other female athletes who were born female, and therefore it's unfair. On the other hand, you also go like, well, Michael Phelps is built like a human torpedo, and he got that because of genetics, and he gets to kick everyone's ass in the Olympics because of that. And we're struggling with this idea of like, well, do we care if athletes have a genetic advantage versus they just went in the gym and worked harder than everybody else? So to expect this movie from 2004 to have a better answer for this unresolved question than our society does now, I think it's fair for the movie to end on this kind of unclear note of like, well, they can't reveal their secret identities. They still have that problem. The government ban on superheroes is still in effect at the end of this movie. It'll be dealt with more in the second one. So for Dash to go like, well, I still get to compete in sports, even if I have to kind of fake my way to second place, it's better than not, than sitting on the sidelines entirely. Yeah, he could just, win the race in world record time every time. Shouldn't he be allowed to do that? Maybe that's just fair. And maybe he competes against other people. And if you have a superpower, then you're the best athlete. Is that any different than being Michael Jordan and just being awesome at basketball because of a combination of genetics and hard work? I don't know. I don't think the movie has an answer. I don't have an answer, but I think it's fair to look at this and kind of go, well, the movie started by asking these questions about, if you're exceptional at something, do you have to hide that to fit in? The movie doesn't fully answer that by the end. It just says, you still should be yourself, and that's probably more important than what society has to say about you, but it's not the end of the conversation.
Yeah, and like superpowers with sports is a thing that will get brought up in piece of media after piece of media. It's a difficult one to do, but it's a fantasy that isn't necessarily real. So it while there are real world analogs, they are way more complicated to have a conversation about than like, well, maybe reverse complicated, because the superpower one is like, well, I don't know, like Dash just wins the race. Like that's just the automatic situation if he's not like held in check in some way. So I don't know. It's strange. Like, I think about like Ultimate Spider-Man dealt with like Spider-Man trying to be like a basketball star, and likewise Spider-Girl had Mayday Parker being a basketball star with superpowers. There is actually a Superman Elseworlds where he became I believe also a basketball star with his superpowers. Like he didn't realize how powerful he was, and so he just thought he was like a really gifted athlete, kind of Unbreakable style, and becomes just this amazing like basketball player. I forget how that one goes. So we should probably look at that at some point, Jmike.
Cool.
But yeah, like the athlete thing is just one I wanted to like kind of bring up because it is one that like no one quite knows where to go with your superheroes. Like if it feels good having them just like run the same race every time, or if it feels good to have them be, you know, exceptional. You know, like could Dash just have won the race, but like only a little bit? Also a thing he could have done, or could he have sat on the sidelines? And should he have sat on the sidelines? Hard to really say. Movie comes down that it's good that he participates, and it's good for him that he participates. But necessarily, like, what's the, you know, how is that right? I don't know if it's, you know, answered with definitiveness. It's just for Dash specifically, he needed to be that boy. Like he needed to run, even if it's not at full speed.
Right. Yeah. So participating in this stuff, even in a limited fashion, is better than sidelining entirely.
Yeah, I have to admit, I do kind of wish that this movie had made it so that Dash didn't look as much like he was running in all the like the group run sequences. I wish it looked more like he was walking, but keeping up with everyone, because he's like he appears to be running with everyone in all the shots, and then it would have been just kind of fun if they just like played with just how fast he was, you know, like walking at a slow pace, but like still keeping up with everyone.
I would have given it away case.
I mean, in like the group shots of them being heroes running around.
Thought you meant like the track field.
No, not
You mean like the other three family
they're
members are like running at full speed, but he appears to be doing a walk cycle?
Yeah, exactly. That just would have been fun, but not necessary. And like, I don't need to get into specifics of how super speed works. Like, is he running and then he can just run faster, which is probably what's happening, and it's all fine. But yeah, then we have the Underminer show up, which is, again, goes back to the whole Fantastic Four comparison, and that's, you know, the Mole Man right there, which is great because we get Superman versus the Mole Man, or the Mole Men, if we want to go back to the George Reeves original movie that launched the series. There's a little bit of a nod there for us Superman fans, but it ends with just like, oh yeah, like they are so enriched by being superheroes, like by having that duality explored and now living with both parts of their lives. Because we open with the whole saying that like, well, no one could be super all the time. That's obviously crazy. So now it's like, yeah, it's a reminder that like you get to be super some of the time, and you get to be ordinary some of the time, and that's a balance that they all like benefit from. And so that part is very hopeful, like them being allowed to be exceptional at the end of the movie is the hopeful aspect of this movie, even though I think that it opens with sort of a more, like I said, angry kind of like perspective. I think it does get there at the end.
Yeah, and again, to segue into Incredibles 2, which opens with the fight against the Underminer, it kind of shows that, you know, it's not that simple. You know, they don't just get to do this. There's still, like I said, all these problems that they have in the world of the franchise that have not gone away. And so it's kind of neat to see them, you know, continue on. I think I like Incredibles 2 more than most, but I think there's a lot there to chew on if and when we get to that one. And that continuing fight against the Underminer, as you said, like the backdrop is this is the triumphant end of this movie, and then what goes wrong during the Underminer fight is the springboard for what happens in the second one. But I just love the Underminer, like, again, like bringing in these like 60s Batman villains. You know, he's a very much an Adam West, you know, also played by John Ratzenberger, because he's Pixar's Lucky Charm at this point. But like, what a great little performance from him as this goofball villain character. I almost wish they had more villains in this world. We really don't get to see very many. They talk about some, but we never see them. And it's a little bit like Watchmen
again,
as well.
Getting back to this. Yeah, it gets back to this feeling a bit like the James Bond is the first thing, and then the superhero thing is an add-on after that, because like the villains are very James Bond-y kind of villains as opposed to like just generic supervillains, except for the Underminer specifically.
Yeah, he's got his big like villain speech and everything. Every
But nothing is.
That's it.
Me.
Yeah, I was looking for it.
I do want to say that this movie is astute in many of the observations it makes about superhero stuff. Like the "you caught me monologuing" is a great bit right there, and it's a thing that like now seems like quaint just because this movie is 20 years old, but at the same time, like it was very interesting for a mainstream media piece to be like, yeah, here's the dissection of the superhero genre. Like, here's the capes conversation from Edna. You know, like here's the problems of a secret identity. Here's why you wouldn't want to be super all the time. Yada yada yada. So like the movie is introspective about the superhero genre, even though I think it's doing a lot of stuff and not just superhero stuff. And so I do appreciate that. I think that this is a strong movie with a really cool family team that are very effective together. And it's nice that we got a competent set of parents within a competent set of kids. Like, it could very easily have been the kids were like the real heroes, or that the parents are saving the kids, or something, but they hit the dynamic really well, while at the same time everyone having their goofy kind of quirks. And so it's like a really good family dynamic balance. I rather enjoy this movie, even if I don't like it as much as I think the general consensus of people is.
I think it's a great conversation. The movie itself is a conversation on superheroes in general, and it comes at a point in time where you have to sort of think about when this movie came out in 2004. We're in the run-up to the MCU, but it hadn't started yet. The MCU starts in 2008, and Christopher Nolan's Batman is 2005, 1 year after this. So you're in this world of like, the late 90s is basically a desert as far as superhero movies. It's like we had Batman Returns and then a bunch of dog shit after that, leading up to like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man and the X-Men doing okay, and then a bunch of these weird like Marvel one-offs that like didn't quite work, like Hulk, Ghost Rider, things like that were just sort of like, okay, I guess we got this weird Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck, right? Like, so the superhero genre was like you could see like the sparks starting to happen for that, but the flame of superhero stuff didn't really turn on until like 2008 when we get Dark Knight and Iron Man. It's the perfect time to be sort of waxing nostalgic about the, again, 60s Batman stuff, the Christopher Reeve Superman stuff, and to a lesser extent, Batman, all of this like golden and silver age comic stuff that feeds into this. It's a great chance to get kind of meta and talk about these things and kind of how fun they are within the family, like still what is, I think, a very effective family story before like everything gets kind of Whedonified.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it, or just MCU-ified in general. Like the Robert Downey Jr. kind of quippiness starts that whole progression as it would go. I don't know. Is there anything that we didn't hit on that you guys would like to address?
The true MVP, Hari, the babysitter.
Oh yeah, I did enjoy her where she like was rattling off like all these like factoids about being a babysitter. I remember doing like babysitter CPR training, and like they like try to impress on you like all the things you should be doing for the kids, and it was like, oh, that was cute. She was like parroting it very well, and then it was like, I wish my parents played me Mozart because sometimes I don't understand anything.
She was surely left alone on her own island without any training about what was going on with that kid.
Yeah,
I think what I love about this is that for all of the superhero stuff in it and kind of all of the adventure stuff in it, it never stops commenting on kind of the awkward family stuff that affects everybody. From like, Mrs. Incredible, like looking at her ass in the mirror and going like, I've let myself go, or, Violet's crush, or, any of these things that are like very, very human within the superhero context. Like, I think that's what really makes this work, because you could still see your own family or yourself in these characters, despite their very extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah, I have never seen myself more in Mr. Incredible than I do now as an actual father. Not seen this movie, and I since that particular change happened in my life, and that was a big change for me. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, I'm really feeling it. I'm really relating to Mr. Incredible, and I'm really relating to the moments of being excited for. Like when my daughter like climbs up a thing that she shouldn't be climbing up, I always am like a little excited, and my wife is always a little mad at me that I'm so excited about it. So like it was like I definitely could relate to those moments there. Yeah, I don't know. It's a fun film.
In short, incredible.
Doug, thank you for bringing this.
Oh, I'm glad to. I'm glad we had a chance to get back together and get on mic again. And I think this is a really fun superhero topic. And maybe we'll put 2 on the docket at some point, or something else.
Yeah. I mean, not 14 years like the actual wait between the movies. But we'll probably give it a minute, and then we'll come back to it. In the meantime, you're always welcome back here. But also, where can people find you and follow you?
Sure. So my show is Nostalgium Arcanum. It's as hard to spell as you think, which makes it real easy to find and follow. But if you type in Nostalgium, not nostalgia, but Nostalgium, and a social network of your choice or podcast app of your choice, you'll find it, because, again, nothing else is spelled that way, because the kids love Latin. So just go, to any social network or podcast app and look for it. The show is a nostalgia-based show, so each week we have a guest on to talk about whatever subject it is that still kind of got a hold on their hearts and brains 20, 30 years later, and why that is. And if you want to look, a good place to start, Case has been on a few episodes of ours, including, we did one on Friends, we did one on Calvin and Hobbes, and Dazed and Confused. So you're welcome back anytime.
Yeah. Thank you. Jmike, you should think of something that you want to wax poetically about and go on.
Whatever that thing is, it's just, like I said, still got you won't shut up about 30 years later.
How about a goofy movie?
How about it?
How about a goofy or extremely goofy movie? Ooh.
I'm sorry, that's too goofy. We can't have you on for that.
Oh, man.
Don't you steal my brand, Jmike. Don't you steal my
What are
brand.
you talking about, Case? I don't know what you're talking about.
Jmike, on that note, where can people find you and follow you?
I'm going to go ahead and transition totally to over at Blue Sky at j5.bluesky.social. That's going to be my home from now on. I'm only on Twitter for sports stuff, but Blue Sky is now my official place.
Yeah,
Woo!
Blue Sky is where I'm trying to direct people to these days. I mean, you can also find me on Instagram, where I am holding on to my AIM screen name from high school for dear life, which is at Kesselcoatl5. But on Blue Sky, you can find me at Case Aiken at the .bluesky.social, whatever it is. But if you search for Case Aiken, you'll find me on it. So find me on Blue Sky. It's been a lot of fun trying to transition all of my comics Twitter friends and content over to Blue Sky, but I'm starting to make that progression. But if you also want to engage with us more directly, you can also find us at the Certain POV Discord server, which you can find a link on our website or in the show notes for the show. Go to the Certain POV Discord and come interact with us directly. Like I'm hanging out there all the time. If you tag Jmike, he will respond.
I'm there as well.
Yeah, and Doug is an active participant in our Discord. It's great having him, and it's great having a lot of the podcast family that we've accrued. The this incredible podcast family that's out there. So come interact with us directly there. It's a really good time. We talk about the episodes. We talk about other nerd content. It's a good old time. But you should also check out the Certain POV Podcast Network. We have a ton of great shows. I am going to shout out Books That Burn right now, which is a wonderful show that takes the perspective of the characters in the piece are rational actors, and the author is the one inflicting trauma upon them, and how that is perceived. And it's a really interesting approach to looking at books, and especially books that have traumatic things occur to the characters. So that's a really wonderful series to check out. I've been a patron for them for years and years now. So yeah, check out Robin and Nicole doing that. It's such a great show. And they've been trudging on, and it's real hard to keep podcasts going. We all have friends who have started shows and life gets in the way. This show has had issues with production because of life getting in the way. So I just want to give a shout out to a show that continues to just do exceptional work. So check that out and then circle back for our next episode. But until then, stay super, man.
Men of Steel is a Certain POV production. Our hosts are Jmike Folson and Case Aiken. The show is edited by Sophia Ricciardi. Our logo is by Chris Batista, and episode art is by Case Aiken. Our theme is by Geoff Moonen.
Are you tired of watching your beloved characters being tortured by careless authors?
Are you sick of feeling like they could have swapped out all of the painful action and the plot would remain untouched? Subscribe to Books That Burn, the fortnightly book review podcast focusing on fictional depictions of trauma.
We assume that the characters' reactions are reasonable and focus on how badly or well they were served by their authors.
Join us for our minor character spotlights, main character discussions, and favorite non-traumatic things in the dark books we love.
Find us on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.